Hello friends, welcome back to session 6 of AWS networking. So far in the previous sessions, okay, we have covered the VPC, which is virtual private cloud, internet gateway, subnet, including the public and private subnet, NAT gateway, CIDR, routing table, and NACL, network access control list, right? So that means mostly we have covered the critical networking component in the AWS cloud. Okay, so now in this session, we are going to learn how we can create the VPC. Okay, so this is a practical session where we will create the VPC and then we'll see what are the different options that we get when we create the VPC in the AWS cloud. Okay, so right now I am on my AWS console. Okay, so here you can see this is a console home. Okay, so to create a VPC, okay, we can directly go to this menu and then we can search for the VPC. Okay, so there are multiple ways to visit the VPC section. Okay, so by default, when you log in, okay, if you have visited this section earlier, then you will see the list of sections here. So you can click on VPC from here as well. Otherwise, you can search in the search bar here as well, and you can click on VPC option. Then you will end up on the VPC dashboard. Okay, so here we have option to create the VPC. Okay, now to create the VPC, before that, let me tell you, when I click on your VPCs, okay, you can able to see one VPC is there. Okay, so by default, every region has a default VPC. Okay, so this is the option from where we can select any of the region. Okay, wherever you want to work. So let me select some different region. For example, let me select the Sydney region. Okay, you can select any of the region. In every region, okay, the AWS has provided one of the default VPC. Okay, and along with that, there are multiple other different component that is specifically required for the VPC. Like we have subnets, so there will be subnets. So you can see here three subnets are there, and these subnets are for each and every zone. Right, so that means in each and every region we have a different availability zones, which is also called the data centers. So I have selected the Sydney region here, right? So in Sydney, they have the AWS has three availability zones. That means three data centers. Okay. So for each and every availability zone, there would be a corresponding subnet. Okay. So this is the first one. This is the second one. And this is the third one. Okay. So this is the default subnet. Okay. Which is automatically created for you. Okay. Along with the VPC. So now we have a default VPC. And then we have the default subnet for each and every region. Then we have one associated routing table. So with the subnet, we can associate the routing table, which is the entry point for the traffic to the VPC. Right? We have covered in the previous session. Right? So this is the routing table that is currently associated with your VPC. Okay. So if you click on the subnet association, okay, you can see with this routing table, these all three subnets are associated. Okay, and if I click on the routes, okay, so we can see here the routes as well. This we have covered in the previous sessions. So this subnet has a route to the internet gateway. Okay, that means this particular routing table is allowing the traffic to the internet, in and out to the internet, because it has a route to the internet gateway, because internet gateway is a entry point for the public network or for the internet to your VPC. Right, so this is also configured for you automatically, routing table. Okay, and if I click on internet gateway, so you can say this is the default internet gateway that is already associated. Right, so that means if you deploy any other web application, that you can access it from the internet, because by default the internet gateway is configured there. Okay, similarly, if you click on some other configurations like the network ACLs, NACL, so you can see there is a NACL is already there. Okay, which is associated with all of the three subnets by default. Right, and when I click on security group, so there is a one security group is also there, which is a default security groups for you. Okay, which control the traffic in and out to your resources inside the particular subnet, for example the virtual machines. Right, so all these topics we have covered in detail in theoretically in the previous all the previous sessions. Right, so VPC, then subnet, routing table, internet gateway. This is a NAT gateway which is not created automatically for you because it incurs the cost, and along with that network ACL and security group. So all these concepts we have covered in detail previously. So by default it is automatically there for you as a default configurations. Okay, for learning purpose it is provided. So when we create any of the virtual machine, okay, we can select all the default configurations, but when we are in the production environment or in any customer environment, then we create our own VPCs. We do not go with the these default VPCs. Okay. So now what is the option to create your own VPC? So for that you can go to VPC dashboard. Okay, and here we have option called the create VPC. So click on create VPC, and before configuring any of the resources in your AWS account, make sure to select the proper region. Okay, wherever you want to create the resources. So now when we create the VPC, so here we have two options. The first is the VPC only, and second is the VPC and more. So VPC only, that means it is going to create only VPC. Okay, and other configurations like the subnet, internet gateway, routing table, NACL, all those configurations will not be there, and you have to configure them manually, right? So that means each and every configuration you have to do manually if you go with the VPC only option. Okay, so let me first show you how to create a VPC only. Okay, so here you have to give a tag for your VPC. Okay, so let me give it as a demo VPC 1, right? And this is a CIDR block, so you have to give a CIDR for our VPC, right? This also we have covered in detail in the CIDR section. What is CIDR, right? And for assignment of the CIDR for your VPC, okay, there is a standard which you can see in this AWS documentation as well. Okay, there are certain IP ranges that you can utilize to define the some CIDR for your VPCs, right? So CIDR is specifically for the IP addresses that is going to allocate to your resources in your VPC. Okay, so for all these CIDRs, we have a standard which is based on the RFC 1918, which you can see from here as well. Okay, so this is a standard. RFC 1980 is a standard. Okay, which is used to define the CIDR for your private network or for the AVPC CIDRs. So this is the range that you can see here. Okay, which is same specified here in the AWS documentation as well. So whatever the CIDR that you are going to choose for your VPC, okay, it should be from this particular range, right? So now I am going with the IPv4 CIDR, and here you have an indication as well 10.0.0./24. So if you want, then you can select the same 10.0.0.0 slash and then 24. Okay, and this particular CIDR has to be in this particular range. If we are going with the 10.0.0.0, it has to be in this particular range. Similarly, you can go with this particular range as well, and this is the third range. Right. So we have given the IPv4 CIDR. We are not going with the IPv6 IP addresses scheme. We are going with the IPv4 only. Now here we have a tenancy. Tenancy, we have two options, default and dedicated. So default means your resources is going to be configured in the shared manner. Okay, that means the virtual machine that is you are going to create for your account in this particular account or in this particular VPC, it is going to be shared with the other clients, right? So what we have in the virtual machine, there is a physical server, and on top of physical servers we create the multiple virtual machines, right? Now in a single physical server there could be multiple virtual machines, okay, and that can belong to the multiple clients, which is called the default or shared model. So in that case the cost will be less. Okay, so many clients like the banking or financial institute doesn't like this shared model. They don't want their hardware to be shared, so they go with a dedicated model. Okay, so we can go with a dedicated tenancy as well. So in this, all the resources or hardware is going to be explicitly for you only. Okay, that means if you're going to create a virtual machine, the hardware will be dedicated for you. It is not going to be shared with other. So what will happen in that case? You have to incur the extra cost because the hardware will be dedicated for you. So if you go with the dedicated, the cost will be high. Okay, so I'm going with the default one, which is the shared model. Okay, and then if you want to specify any tag to identify or search your VPC at a later time, then you can add your tag here. By default, a tag is added with the name of VPC, what we have given here, right? So these are the important configurations we have to provide when we create the VPC with the VPC only option. Okay, and let me create VPC. Okay, so now you can see the VPC has been created successfully, right? So now let me go to VPC section, right? So this is the default VPC. Now this is the VPC that we have created, right? Now if I click on the resource map, okay, so resource map gives the complete mapping of all the subnet and your routings. Okay, so let me first show you the default one, then you will understand it. So this is the default VPC where I told you there are multiple different subnets and internet gateway routing, everything is default configured for you. So I have selected a default one. So we can see here in the resource mapping, there are three subnets, there is a routing table, and there is a network connection. Okay, So that is automatically configured for you, internet gateway, routings, and then subnet. But when I click on my VPC, which I have created, there is nothing is there. Okay, there is no subnet, there is no routing table, there is no network connection, right? So that means you have to configure everything manually. That means you have to go to subnet, and then you have to click on create subnet, and you have to create a new subnet for you. Once subnet is created, you have to go with the routing tables, internet gateways, okay, one by one, NACL, and then you have to configure each and every resources manually. So this is the option when we create the VPC with the VPC only option, right? Now, if you want to create every other resources in a single go, then you can go with the VPC and more. Okay, so now as soon as you select VPC and more, you can see here there are multiple other options are displaying here. Okay, and there is a resource map on the right hand side, right? So now what are these resources? So by default, if you see here, I have selected VPC and more, right? So this is the name that has been automatically given to your VPC, which is automatically tagged project. Okay, that means whatever the resources that we are going to create, it will be a prefix for each and every resources. Like subnet, you can see here project is the prefix. Routing table project is the prefix. Okay, similarly here network connection project is a prefix. Right. So this is the prefix. Now apart from that, this is the CIDR for your VPC. Okay, so you have to specify a particular CIDR for your VPC according to the availability, right? And then if you scroll down, this is the same tenancy. If you would like to go with the default or dedicated model, you have to select this one. We are not going with, to select the IPv6 address scheme. We are going with only IPv4. Now, in this particular region, CDN region, okay, there are three availability zones. Okay, so you can see here, this is the number of availability zones. Okay, so in how many zones you would like to configure your resources? Okay, you may need only or all three zones to be selected for configuration of the resources. Okay, so by default it is 2. So by default it is 2 means it is going to configure the resources in the 2 availability zones. That means in the 2 data center in the Sydney region. Okay, so here you can see the default 2 availability zones are selected. This is the first availability zone and this is the second availability zone. This means the first data center and second data center. And with respect to each and every availability zone, there would be 2 subnet will be configured. One is the public subnet and second is the private subnet. Okay, so this is the first availability zone. This is my public subnet. This is my private subnet. This is my second availability zone. This is the public subnet and this is the private subnet. That means in each and every availability zone, it is automatically going to configure one subnet, which is the public subnet, and second is the private subnet. Now, how it differentiate when we create the public subnet? So here public subnet will have route to the internet gateway, right? Because we know that internet gateway is the entry point for the traffic from the internet or public internet in your VPC. So that means if any of the subnet has a route to the internet gateway, it is a public subnet. And if any of the subnet doesn't have route to the internet gateway, it is a private subnet. So here this is a route which is going to the S3. If you see here VPCE S3, okay. So this is a default routing for the S3 services which is inside your VPC S3 storage just to save your cost. Okay. So I will tell you on what is that. Okay, when we'll come to this option in the same screen. So in a nutshell, we have a 2 subnet automatically selected for each and every subnet. There are 2 subnet automatically created, public and private subnet, right? If you would like to go with the all 3 availability zones, then you have option, you can select the 3. So as soon as you will select the 3, you will see here the third availability zone also added here, and along with the same one public subnet and one private subnet. So if you see here, if I hover over the public subnet, it will show the route to the internet gateway in each and every zone. This is my public subnet in zone 2. This is my public subnet in zone 3, and each and every subnet has a route to internet gateway. Correct? Here. Now you see here. If I hover over the internet gateway, it is showing you all the subnet which is sending traffic to the internet gateway. That means these 3 are the public subnets. And if I hover over this S3, so these are the private subnets. Okay, and the or associated routing tables. So with respect to each and every subnet, we have one routing table should be associated. Okay, so now you can see there are 4 you have 6 subnet. For public subnet, we have a common routing table which is sending the traffic to internet gateway. And for private subnet, we have the corresponding routing table for each and every private subnet. Correct? So by this way, you can restrict, okay, to the availability zones. Okay. Now, apart from that, if you would like to increase the number of private subnet, for example, you would like to go for 6, you can select the 6. It is automatically create 6 private subnet for you. Right. Now, for each and every subnet, we will have a corresponding CIDR. Right. This we have learned in the initial session, that this CIDR is the CIDR for the VPC. That means the total number of IP addresses available within your VPC. Now we divide the VPC into the subnets, right? That means each and every subnet will have a corresponding CIDR, and which will be derived from this parent CIDR, or you can say the CIDR of VPC, right? So now for that, if you would like to modify that, you can click on this customize subnet CIDR details, and here you can see the CIDR for each and every subnet. If you want to customize it, you can customize it here. If you don't want to customize, you can go with the default one. You can go with the default one. Okay, and then here is the option to select the NAT gateway. If you would like to configure the NAT gateway in a particular availability zone, or one NAT gateway in each and every availability zone. Okay, so you can configure here, but it is going to incur a cost for you. If you don't want, then don't select the NAT gateway. Okay, and now in the VPC endpoint, you can see it is saying S3 gateway. Okay, so here VPC endpoint S3 gateway means your public subnet automatically opened a route to the S3 services. Right, so that means if any of your instances want to access any of the objects from the S3 storage, okay, the default automatically route is added there. It will automatically allow to the S3 services. Okay, if it is not there, you may have to configure the NAT gateway, which will incur extra cost for you. Right, so for that we have this particular S3 gateway is service is automatically configured for each and every private servers. If you want to disable it, you can disable it this as well. Okay, so this will disable this particular route. Right, and then we have to go with the enable DNS hostname options, which is by default selected, so that the resolution of the DNS can be happened in your VPC. So these are the important configurations that we do or we provide when we configure the VPC, right? So if you have missed our previous sessions, okay, we have only 5 sessions, theoretical sessions earlier to this session, okay, where we have covered in detail about what is VPC and what is CIDR, how we assign the CIDR, what is the best way to define the CIDR range, okay, benefits of CIDR, what is internet gateway, what is public and private subnet, what is your NAT gateway, routing tables, NACL, security groups, everything we have covered in detail. Okay, so now these are the configuration that we have provided. So after that, click on create VPC. Now you can see that these are the number of resources that is going to be configured in your VPC, right? So now because we have selected all the configurations like subnet, the public and private subnet, internet gateway, routing tables, right? So everything is going to be configured for you, okay, in this VPC. So it is created. Now click on VPC. Okay, if I go to dashboard, now you can say this is the VPC that has been created for us, right? Now if I click on resource map, you can see here in the resource map, okay, now all the components are displaying here, right? So this is our first availability zone, this is second availability zone, and this is third availability zone. These are the corresponding subnet. Okay, if I hover over the public subnet, you will see the routing to the internet gateway, and if I hover over the public private subnet, it will show you the routing to the S3 services, right? And if you click on the CIDR, then it will show you the CIDR of your VPC. If I click on the subnets, then you will see the subnets are created here. Let me refresh the screen. Okay. Yeah. So now you can see these are the corresponding subnet that has been created for our VPC, right? If I click on routing tables, so we have a routing tables are created, right, for our subnets. Internet gateway, you can see one more internet gateway is created for our VPC, right? Similarly, if I go to NACL, okay, you can see the NACL is created for our VPC, right? So if I go to security groups, so we have only one security group as of now, and if I refresh the screen, then you can able to see there are some more. Sorry, there are 3 default VPC default security groups are there, right, for your default VPC. Okay, now if you are going to configure the your resources in your particular EC2 like EC2 instance in your particular subnet, then you can configure the corresponding security group as well. Okay, otherwise you can create security group from here as well. Okay, according to your requirements, you can just give a name for a security group like demo security group. Okay, and then you can set the VPC. For example, we are creating it for our own VPC, which is the project hyphen VPC. Okay, we have set a VPC. Now you would like to add any inbound rule, like you would like to allow the traffic from some particular IP addresses or some port, then you can give it. For testing purpose, we can give all traffic, and we can specify all the IP addresses, so it will allow the traffic from anywhere. Okay, this is not recommended rule for your production environment. Okay, so similarly, we can add the outbound rules as well, and you can click create security group. Okay, you can provide a description. So let me give demo. Click on create security groups. Okay, so now this is the security group that has been created, right? So this is the inbound rule, and this is the outbound rules, which you can modify or edit anytime. And this security group you can assign to the virtual machine that you will create inside the VPC that you have created, right? So this is the way how we can create the different kind of VPCs, like using the VPC only option or VPC with more options, and how we configure the other related networking configurations. Thank you.